There's a quote that I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, where it's like there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. And this was literally
Mm,
in a year. Every week it felt like decades were occurring.
yeah, yeah. Honestly, honestly.
What's going on, world? Welcome back to another episode, our year-end special episode of the Select All podcast. I'm Taran, your wealth geek, loves everything about wealth generation and personal finance, and we got Cole in the house, Cole the coding nerd, and he loves programming in his free time. That's just what he loves doing. And we got the grumpy engineer in the house, Mo, as always.
What's up, fam?
All right, so today's episode is going to be a special one. It's going to be more of a year-end review. We're going to cover a bunch of topics. First off, we're going to cover some topics that made the headlines for this year that we believe were the biggest headlines for the year. So, somewhat like a review of all the big headlines that happened. And then after that, we're going to cover some predictions that we have for the upcoming year 2023. So, boys, let's dive right in.
So it's gonna be almost a year since the start of this, but the Russian-Ukrainian war. I don't think it's, if not the biggest, one of the biggest things that happened this year. It actually happened pretty early into pretty earlier into 2022, which is still crazy to think about. It's been like a lifetime, but you know, it's been everywhere from like a humanitarian crisis to a political crisis to like even affecting our pocketbooks like thousands of miles away. Like this war has caused inflation to skyrocket, especially when it comes to fuel, food, you name it. And it wherever you are in the world, you are affected by this right now as it's still happening, which
Yeah,
is crazy to think about to have in 2022. Like this kind of hot war, crazy.
yeah. And it's affected like different viewpoints as well, right? Like for example, Germany being affected by the energy crisis, UK being affected by the energy crisis because of this. They're rethinking things that the steps that they took, like in terms of climate change and things along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Not being energy independent allowed them to be in a situation where they might have to make some hard decisions. They can't kind of go against Russia and things along those lines in certain aspects, even though they are trying, right? So it affects. It had an effect and allowed people to rethink how they manage their countries in a different way as well, right? I think before this war, we were kind of in a different thinking pattern, right? Yeah. So it's interesting because it definitely made me think about how, especially with energy independence, I realized that effect that it had on countries and things along those lines, and how reliant countries are on each other, right?
Mm.
And then the financial sector, the sanctions that occurred, what that did to the Russian currency, what that did to the USD currency. There's a lot of permeating effects that have, and of course, the main effect that Ukrainians are being displaced, and there's
Yeah.
insane amounts of people that were affected by this, right? By this act.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
we're starting to, like, I guess this is going to be the start, or it already has happened, where things between countries or alliances are like shifting. Things are not as open before. People or countries are more cautious. You're seeing a ramp up of like military expenditure. Like it's really giving it's a quite, I assume, a quite a shock to a lot of countries around the world, regardless of what your political thoughts are on how you need to conduct yourselves in this world stage, right? Like sometimes you really
Exactly.
do have to look out for your own.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. It's funny because there's this talk about deglobalization, right? And that's essentially the essence where now we might get into a decade where countries are going to look to be more independent than dependent on each other. So it's interesting,
Mm.
and yeah, to your point, Cole, with this war, it had such a big ripple effect in so many industries, and you could say that had an effect in inflation, which I know we'll be talking about soon. Um, but not just that, it just had an effect even on the relationships between countries, which is
Hmm.
quite interesting. Yeah.
Could be the
Yeah.
start of something or some kind of conflict with China. Like
Yeah.
we'll be talking about this most likely in 2023, if not into 2030s. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna it's
And I was just gonna say it's interesting how all these multiple events that occurred in 2022, which is insane the amount that's happened in a single year. In the last 2 years, right? It's
Oh yeah.
insane how much has happened. And so, uh, COVID, and then this war, and now China getting affected by COVID a little bit more again, and how that plays out, and how China is like how they're playing internal politics and things along those lines. Just everything all happening at once, right? It seemed like the last 10 years were fairly smooth sailing. And then all of a sudden, it's just like a whole barrage of things hitting all at once, which
Yeah.
was interesting.
Yeah. Just to close up that topic. There's a quote that I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, where it's like there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen, and this was literally
Mm,
in a year. Every week it felt like decades were occurring.
yeah, yeah. Honestly. All right. Sorry, just setting up a timer.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. So the next thing I think that is, of course, as Turan mentioned, inflation, right? This has definitely been something that's been kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's essentially present. And inflation has gotten to a point where it's really affecting people's lives on a day-to-day basis. It hadn't been there; it was very low for a very long time,
It was there.
because
It
of the
was
low
there, but
interest rates.
it's
it was
always
just
there. I
on the
mean,
low
It's
inflation
side.
always
is
there.
yeah.
Yeah, it's always
Exactly.
there, but now it's just more inflated than before.
Exactly. And so we had an environment of low interest rates for a fairly long time. Money was cheap, and because of that, things were being inflated, but it was fine because money was easy to access, right?
Hmm.
But now, since money's harder to access, but the inflation hasn't caught up yet, it and it has gotten actually worse because of the world events that are happening across the world. Is really affecting people, right? It obviously the food inflation is there, gas prices are high. Real estate prices were very high and now are being affected, right, by the downturn. But now the opposite is true. The people that have kind of created points where they bought new houses are unable to close now because their prices have come down, right? And so the mortgages won't cover the new appraisal values, right? Or relative to the old prices that they had bought in for, right? So when they get it reappraised, they can't close on those homes. So it's affected insane amounts of different industries, and now people are finally seeing it, right? I think
Mhm.
Canada's inflation rate was, reading here, is about 6.8% year
It
over
went
year.
down, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it
Which
went as high as 7.9 or 8,
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
which is
yeah,
crazy to think about, but it's also crazy to think about it's one of the lower ends of inflation. Like there are countries seeing like 15, 20, 30,
I was just gonna
like
say,
100. Like
yeah,
it's crazy. Like
yeah, but those are also countries that have always been in that situation,
yeah.
like
Yeah. But
Zimbabwe, Argentina, Venezuela, right? With
yeah,
a
that's
lot of
fair.
countries now, it's because of all the
Hmm,
printing that happened, just the way the economy is going in terms of, with the war and all that, all those effects having an effect on the demand for goods, which causes inflation, right? So
definitely.
yeah. And I'd like to look at my like house financial situation, just as business owners would as well, right? um a lot of business owners are being told to take debt off their books, elongate their cash, keep more cash in their kind of books, have that runway possible for a very long time, right? Or as long as the next 2 years. And so you can, as just a comment for most households, right? Like, obviously, do your own research. This is not financial advice. Like, always understand that you have to do your own research and figure out what works for you. But essentially, taking debt off your books, as much debt as you can, for the next 2 years would be wise, right?
Hmm.
Any high interest rate debt. So, like credit cards, pay those off if you can, right? Don't get leases if you can avoid them. For cars, right? Try to buy cash cars and things along those lines. Or if you can find low interest rates, which I doubt you will be able to, right? So it's doing those types of things that will allow you to kind of have more cash on the tail end of when this situation gets a bit better, right? Or we get past this whole situation. I don't know. Just some
Yeah.
advice that I thought I would share.
Yeah, find good vehicles that can hold your cash while not losing too much buying power and not being subject to volatility. Of course, the most common is put it in a savings account, right? But there's GICs too, and there is life insurance as well.
Yeah,
Whole life policies. You know, you can research about that. That's a good vehicle to store your capital, and you can have access to capital at any time by doing that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's just elongating that cash runway for your household is probably the best thing to do at this moment. Buy things in bulk, right? Go to Costco.
Costco.
Try to buy cheap items that are will last you a bit longer would be the best bet, right? And buying assets right now isn't a bad thing, right? Buying things that you know will actually um, at least give you cash flow, right? Don't buy things on
Yes.
appreciation, because you don't know if they're going to go up in the next in this environment, because of the fact that inflation is high, and especially things like real estate will be coming down because they're trying to level set the prices. But if you
Yes.
can buy things that will give you cash flow, that would be probably the best thing to do right now.
Yeah, and speaking of
Sure.
buying things at a good price, what a better time than to like segue into the next big thing of the year, the market and some crypto, or I guess total market like downturn, crash, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's if you had a lot of equities, you're kind of feeling the pain right now, but you know, it's also a time to reflect and see like what good deals are out there. I think like there's two sides to this coin here.
Yeah.
exactly. And just like crypto and the crypto crash that occurred. So Trent, why don't you tell us about that? What do you think happened there?
Yeah. So we had a extremely volatile year, especially in the crypto market. And we already know when it comes to crypto, it's a pretty volatile asset class to begin with. And we had a couple of big crashes that really broke the back of the market multiple times during the year. It started off with Luna and Celsius, where that entire system just like fell off the rails, and which created a ripple effect on the rest of the crypto market. You all you got to do is look at the way Bitcoin dropped over the year, and you could see that every big drop of Bitcoin, I think it was every time there was a crash, it was like 10 to 15% drop in Bitcoin in the price of Bitcoin. And so you just have to look at the chart and see when that occurred, and you'll know when those crashes occurred with those different institutions. So we had Luna and Celsius to begin with. Luna's done. I know Celsius entered bankruptcy, and they're working through that. I actually, got involved with Celsius. I had some of my coins. It's with Celsius, and they're doing a decent job of handling it, sending emails, keeping
Hmm.
people posted about it. So I'm very happy from that standpoint. But yeah, there were a lot of people that got
Yeah. So
affected by that. Yeah, and then
Yeah, then
we had
it's
BlockFi
crazy.
and FTX as well later on in the year that just killed the market.
yeah, so it was funny because it's like Luna, I think, was the first kind of. Oh, something's about to happen, right? It was the first time in the crypto market where the high went away. Like that's when people realized, oh, we're actually not going to be able to kind of shoot to the moon, so to speak,
Wait,
right, and
does it
keep
go up
going.
forever?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so that's when people are like, oh, there are flaws in this industry. And people knew about NFTs and things along those lines. And there's a lot of headlines.
Yeah.
And I can go on and on about NFTs. You guys know that. But I think that was the first kind of downturn, right?
Yeah.
In the whole market.
Yeah, we see this as like, I don't know, this is our third crypto crash kind of thing. At this point, there's a very established pattern. Like, crypto gets into the mainstream, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of these. Can I swear? Because I'm gonna just a bunch
Yeah.
of shit coins, bunch of shit projects, like a bunch of dumb things chasing money, and money was cheap. Like, with ties to our last topic, right? And people funded it, and then you know when the tide goes down, you see who actually has a proper boat, right?
Who's swimming
Yeah.
naked? You see who's
Exactly.
swimming
There you
naked.
go. That's what I
What
was
it
trying to
is.
say. Who's swimming naked?
Honestly, it's just the people didn't make smart decisions. Even all my friends and things along those lines, when I would tell them to invest in crypto and give that advice, I would always say don't invest more than 5%, and don't unless you are doing your own research, right? Like, if I'm advising you to buy crypto, I always say that don't buy more than
Mhm.
5% if you don't know what you're doing. And second, still do your research, right? Like, do understand the market, right? And also, don't put your savings in there. Don't put money that you can't afford to lose. Was very important. But I feel like people got government checks, those government checks, man, and they're like, yeah, this is my get rich quick scheme, right? So
Yeah,
let's do this.
we found out how YOLO Sequoia Capital plays it by the books. Like, this man is playing League of Legends. Yo, let's give him like what, $500 million. It's all good, bro. His man's a genius.
So I didn't understand that. Like, we can kind of go into this, and I feel like we don't have enough time, but it it might, in my opinion, it's like, how is a hedge fund that's that good make
It's like,
decisions like that? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
how did you think this was a good idea? Like, did you guys think this was like a brilliant like investment strategy? Like, if this is an ADHD addicted nerd, like obviously he's going to make us lots of money. Like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Was
I
that
mean, he did. It's just he was a fraud eventually. So it's like, maybe those maybe those are the signs that they should have looked for. Is he a fraud or not? It's unfortunate, because it's like, same with Elizabeth Holmes. Those people didn't do their due diligence, right?
Yeah, yeah.
At all. And I actually heard a pod where they were discussing that. They're like, a lot of these new investment firms, like Sequoia is not a new investment firm, but they probably had new fund managers that
Yeah.
were kind of new in the game. And it might be that, oh, we don't have to do our due diligence. We just kind of have to do surface level and really understand, like, is this a horse to bet on or not, right? But they did no due diligence of the horse or the business is trying to run. Like, it didn't make any sense, right? So it was interesting.
FTX is funny. Sorry, we're kind of going on overboard, but FTX is one of those things. Like, if you had actually run it legitimately, you could have actually made money. Like, it could have been worth what people thought it
Yeah,
was.
honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ugh.
Honestly, it was just a lot of, like, with what was it, CZ and Binance and things like that. There was a lot of, like, back and forth, and CZ really created an environment where I guess FTX couldn't survive. Right? They called. I think it was like a margin loan call or something like that.
They're
They put in.
dumping FTX tokens, and that's
Yeah,
where like all the,
Mhm.
I guess,
exactly.
value was, whatever.
Yeah.
I
So
think
they created an environment where it failed. I think if it was like for a bit longer, and it would have been probably fine, but he created that environment. And then, not saying what's his name, Sam
SBF.
Friedman,
SBF.
SBF. I don't think uh he did right by any means, because he took customer money and things along those lines. But I think if it had gone for a little while, they might have recovered potentially.
Yeah, yeah.
But CZ just pulled the plug, so to speak, just to get his competitor out of the way, and now, you know,
Yeah.
um,
diamond
shit
level
blew up.
move, by the way. But
It's crazy. It's
Well, I
crazy.
feel I feel like the biggest lessons that came out of that is the importance of regulation. Like that industry needs regulation, right?
Yeah.
mhm.
Because if there was a regulation, these kind of things probably won't happen, or if it does happen, it'll be a rarity, right?
See,
And
and
then
that's the biggest thing. Oh, sorry,
Mhm.
go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't let
No,
you
no, go
finish your
ahead, go
thought.
ahead, go ahead. No, 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 finish.
I was gonna say, that's the biggest thing I realized is, uh, to a level, and this might, okay, guys, conspiracy alert. Okay, so I'm just gonna say this. It's not. I don't think this is true, but it would be insane if it is. I think um, SPF and his connections to the political world was so big that it just seemed. This is a theory I'm putting out. So, what if uh, governments and things along those lines, they realize, holy shit, this could actually take down our financial system, right? This technology has that ability. How do we derail it? Okay, we put in an actor who props this whole thing up, uses that money to give us money, right? Like Democrats and things along those lines. So
Hmm.
we get funding in that sense. We get our people elected, and then eventually we crack down on it, get them in the news and call them a fraud. And now we have an open door to literally say, okay, what the hell's happening in this industry? Look what just happened. You just defrauded a bunch of customers, etc. Because look at how they're treating SBF. Like, they're not going after him like Bernie Madoff or things along those lines. He's coming in the media. He's because he has all these connections. It's very hard for them to pinpoint him because he funded them as well, right? So it's like a huge conspiracy in terms of like, I wouldn't put it past them where they got the money from the from the customers, so they got themselves funded, and on top of that, they opened the door to be able to criticize the crypto industry. Like, it's like a 2-in-1 winning situation on their part.
This conspiracy falls apart if Sequoia Capital does their due diligence.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, this is a master plan, and we just have to realize these hedge funds are dumb as shit.
But
And then,
who knows? It's like, what if there's a plant, like there one guy on their board who's funding them. They just need one guy to say, okay, yeah, you get part of this money. Don't worry,
Oh
right?
yeah, there's like I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happened, Cole. That's a great conspiracy theory there. Because I definitely believe like there's a lot of shit that happens in this world that we have no idea what's happening
Yeah,
behind the doors in any society, any country, any industry. There's so much political bullshit that happens. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's fair.
yeah.
But on the other side of the token, I think people are way too disorganized to do these masterwork plans. Like, it's hard.
yeah. But if you think about like, well, I won't argue for this conspiracy theory a little bit more, but not for long. But I think you just need a few political actors for this to work,
Yeah.
right? You don't need all of Sequoia to do this. You just need a couple of people that give the sign off on this investment. Then you need a couple of people to, because if you think about it, it's like CZ kind of killed their token, etc. Right? And SBF was involved, his girlfriend was involved, and then a few political actors in terms of his parents and things along those lines of how they're related. It's not many people that are required to pull the levers for this to happen, right?
I just like, I'm sure there is some sort of collusion between SBF and his political collections. Don't get me wrong. I just think there's a lot of loose connections to make this work. Like, I think
Sure.
CZ would have done this if there was conspiracy or not. Like, it's in
Yeah,
his best interest to do this, regardless. Like, that's just the
but
simplest equation, right?
at that point, it's like I'm sure there are loose connections for sure. But if you think about it, if you create an environment for a lion to hunt and give him like 500 gazelles, and they can't go anywhere, the lion's gonna hunt these gazelles. You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes you gotta set up an environment where that you most likely, okay, the probability of this happening is pretty high. Then let's create that environment for this person. I'm sure they can't control every aspect of it, but they definitely create an environment where there's, or sorry, they definitely could have created an environment where CZ would have acted this way, right? Um, same with Sequoia. Like, what if they had some proof or some kind of um, environment that they created that made them think, yeah, this guy's good. Like he has these connections, he has this. Like who knows what he said, right?
Hmm.
Their own article explains it, but I think we're deading a, we're beating a dead horse.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Cool. So I think the next thing, kind of related to just doing your due diligence and really not jumping in with 2 feet into business, is Elon buying Twitter, which was very interesting. That happened this year. He said it as a joke, using one of his tweets, that I should probably buy Twitter, and that actually ended up happening. And the way it happened is he sent the offer in and things along those lines. I believe it was for $44 billion. And for some reason, none of his lawyers decided to put in clauses that allow him to just literally just check out if the company's legit, or like have some sort of due diligence in terms of their bots and things along those lines. And when it came to actually finding out that there's a lot of bots for these user accounts that they're using, he couldn't back out of the deal, and he really did try, but he couldn't. And then eventually he
Yeah.
was forced to close, which was interesting. So yeah, what are your thoughts about that? Like, do you think, first of all, what do you think about the lawyers? I want to ask you guys. And second, do you think he made the right decision in buying Twitter, as it takes away from SpaceX and Tesla?
Turan, you want to go first, or can I hop
What
in?
was the first? What was the first? What was the first thing you
It's
said?
more of a joke, but it's more of like, what do you think about the lawyers? Like, should they have put in a clause?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like 100%. Like, why are you working with those lawyers if they don't put in something to help you
Someone
get out
must
of a
have told
deal?
them, like, dude, like, you're gonna leave yourself open to a bunch of risk if you don't put
Fair
this in.
point.
And he's like, nah, bro, I don't know. Like,
I could see that happening. I could see that. You're right. Like, these lawyers are probably like, dude, don't do this.
I don't know.
And he's
Like,
like, nah.
the way it's playing out, it looks like a very dumb move, and in all reality, it will be a dumb move. There's a slight corner in my mind. I'm like, wow, this guy really did some 4D chess out here, like 10 years into the future. But it is really looking like he was just got too, I don't know, overconfident. Was actually pretty dumb from the start. Like, there's a lot of myth behind Elon that's making me like, I don't know, maybe this is a smart, but if it's turning out like it's not, like he's just a regular human that makes regular $44 billion mistakes. I don't know if that's a regular.
So not regular.
I don't know if you can call it a mistake yet.
Yeah.
Like anything in life, you should only judge something by looking at the long term outlook on it, right? Of what happens in the long term. I think we will know 5 to 10 years from now the whether
If it
this
survives.
decision was a good decision or not. I believe in Twitter. I think Twitter is an amazing platform, from the amount of connections that you can make from it and the amount of people on there that I see, at least on my feed, that are in third world countries. I guess Philippines would be a third world country. Yeah, they would. That they are making good incomes by meeting people on Twitter, and they become their clients,
Hmm.
right? And that's just a small example of the power of Twitter. But there's definitely a lot that can be done with it. Of course, I'm no genius, so I don't know what exactly can be done with it. But from the little that I've seen, there is a lot of potential for making the platform profitable, for Elon as the owner, and it's just a matter of execution. And
Mhm.
I think he is playing 4D chess. I think he is playing 4D chess. There's moves that we don't even know he's thinking or about, and we have no idea. And I honestly think it has the ability to be a $1 trillion company in market cap.
Yeah, so I don't think he's playing 4D chess. So the reason why I don't think he is, because the first kind of clue that leads me to understand that it's not 4D chess is when he's like, "Fuck, I need to back out of this deal," right? Like that was the first moment where I'm like, I don't think it's 4D chess. He just made a mistake, right?
No, I think he made a
Now,
mistake with the buy price. Like, I think he paid
yeah,
too much for sure because it was right around the time when the market peaked. Like, talk about
yeah.
timing.
So it's more. That's when I'm like, oh, I don't think he's playing 4D chess. Now, I do believe though it wasn't a bad decision, and let me tell you why. It's
Yeah.
like I think, or sorry, I should qualify that. I don't think he he came in and he's made some changes that make it more viable for profitability in the next couple years, right? So he came in and he just got rid of a huge percentage of their kind of employees and things along those lines. That probably is the majority of the cost, right? Sure, servers cost a lot, but people cost a lot more
And the
as well.
free lunches.
The free lunches, he got rid of a lot to reduce the cost. So he got the financial control of the companies to allow it to have runaways, etc. Right? And from what I hear, they're releasing a couple features in early January, and he's concentrating on product a lot more, right? And he was saying how they weren't shipping fast enough. Right, they weren't shipping new products as quickly. Twitter hasn't changed a lot, to be honest, in the last like year or so, or couple of years, right? There's been some UI fixes or UI changes maybe, but not a lot of in terms of functionality, and that's what he's trying to concentrate on. So I think in the next like 6 to 12 months, if we see insane changes of how the functionality of Twitter changes, that would be interesting. Like one of the changes he's brought in, I'm not sure if we have it yet, but a couple of users do, where they can see the view impressions of other people as well,
Oh,
right?
oh, wow.
Yeah, not just yours, but other people. And so
Oh,
that will
yeah,
show
I
you.
can see. I see it on mine now that you mentioned it. Sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off.
So
Yeah.
so basically things like that is gonna allow people to see the value of the product as well, right? If you can see, okay, this tweet reached 1.5 million people, you're gonna be a bit more like, oh shit, I should worry about this a bit more, right? And so I think they are making fundamental changes to the product that might have a beneficial effect in the next 6 to 12 months, and then we'll know, was it a right move or not, right? I think it is too early because it's only been 6 to 8 weeks, I think, since he's bought it. So we got to give him a little time to just kind of turn it around, right? And
Yeah.
in those 6 to 8 weeks, he's made some pretty like monumental changes that might get it into track, right? So
Yeah, either way, I think in 10 years, Elon buying Twitter is going to be in every business textbook, whether for a good reason or a bad reason,
bad reason.
time will
Fair
have to
point.
tell.
Like, okay, so let's steel man this, right? Like the bad, let's go the bad route. If you go the bad route, you realize it was the dumbest purchase, right? As in, like, it was a waste of money. He couldn't turn it around. It failed, right? That's obviously the end goal of the wrong side. Like, it just fails. It goes bankrupt. That's the worst case scenario, because it can go bankrupt because of the fact that advertisers don't go on it. They don't have a revenue stream, etc. Right? Like, it was a bad choice, right? The $8, I don't think that's going to pick up enough to sustain a company like Twitter, right? The server costs and the amount of people that they employ will not probably be covered by the subscriptions. Now, if you go the like yes route, like advertisers stay on, he does have revenue from $8, etc. But now he owns essentially a media company that is for literally the world, and you can affect change at a global scale, that has more power than some of the media corporations have now.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. You have just toppled the full US media establishment, right? Like, people writing in New York Times about Trump wasn't as big of a deal versus, is Trump going to have a Twitter account or not? That's insane, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Trans just texting on the side that I'm on fire for some reason.
Yeah,
I was just like so.
you just went on your soapbox chair and just like rant.
Yeah, man. Well, I think I thought about that two kind of prongs of Twitter a fair bit, because I'm like, yo, where does this go? But anyways, so well, I guess kind of related, because OpenAI is was partly owned by Elon, and he's a co-founder. What do you think about the AI revolution?
Yeah, 2022 is really, I think, well, like AI revolution has been happening for quite the last few years. Like there have been breakthroughs and inventions on the side, but I think 2022 with the release of ChatGPT and earlier this year DALI, it's really starting to
Hmm.
like make people think like, okay, we're like, we're starting to see things that AI is doing that is not robotic and kind of look like, I guess kind of captures a human essence. Like you have to think like, was this made by a person or was this generated? Like it's really getting into that uncanny valley with these two projects. Who knows what else is coming down the pipeline for this? Yeah, 2022 was a revealing moment for AI, definitely.
Yeah. I heard people like Alex Ramosi and like things like that. People who didn't ever talk about tech this way, all taking pause and be like, okay, AI is going to change the game, and it's now getting a bit more mainstream versus Mo, like, and Turan, we've been talking about AI for the last like 5 years, right? Like we knew that this was kind of coming, and it was getting there, but the amount it's gotten mainstream because of OpenAI is insane. Like everyone's talking about ChatGPT, right? People who aren't even in the industry, they understand that this is coming and this has affected people at a global scale.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think we've beat the drum on this for a while now. Like we talked about it a bunch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And for those wanting to hear those, check out our earlier episodes where
Hmm.
we cover ChatGPT and DALI. We'll put it in the show notes on the which episode it was. But yeah, check those out. We, as Cole said, we've covered those topics a lot. So
Yeah, I would say I want to end this topic with just one thing: is people. There's a quote: people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. I think the same can be applied to this. AI. A lot of people are gonna underestimate or overestimate what it can do in the next like 5 to 10 years, but they're going to underestimate what it can do in the next 20 to 30 years, right? It's going to be insane to the level, the effect that it's going to have in the next coming decades, I think.
Hmm.
absolutely
Yeah.
awesome.
So I guess we'll shift gears. We've been talking about a lot about world scale, general politics, and business. How about we get to some kind of pop culture references? What's happened in 2022? Trend, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing, I mean, the biggest thing in pop culture that I think that happened, or we everyone here, is the slap. The slap. That's all I
The
gotta
slap.
say. And everyone should know what I'm talking about. I'm referring to
Yeah.
Will Smith getting up on one of the biggest stages in entertainment, which is the Oscars, and walks up to Chris Rock and just, you could say he decked him in the face, but he slapped him
Slapped him.
so hard the whole world heard it. So it was it was insane. It was insane. And I remember the
Yeah.
after effects of that, and social media went crazy. There were podcasts covering that. There were so many podcasts on that, and there's so many theories around what happened, how it happened, what caused Will Smith to
Yeah.
do that. It was insane.
Honestly, like people are so shocked, including myself. We were on Twitter and we're like, did they just happen? No, this has to be staged. And for the longest time, I believed it was staged. I'm like,
Yeah.
this cannot have happened.
Yep. It was wild. Like,
I won't forget. Mo was the one who messaged us in our group chat, and he was literally like, "Yo, Will Smith just slapped Chris Rock," and I'm like, "What?"
What? Yeah.
I think as the world or media in general is like becoming super manufactured, even our own social media is manufactured. This is a truly human moment, One guy just get up on stage and just slaps him. Like
Yeah, straight up.
No
that can't be
AI.
staged. Like don't tell me that's staged.
That was the most like just visceral, like human level, just Hunter versus Hunter, I guess. It got very very what was the word I'm looking for, colonial or no, not colonial, like group dynamics and things along those lines. I was just shocked. It is crazy
Mhm.
that that just happened. um and I can't believe that actually happened this year. the reason I'm kind of shocked is when we were kind of planning for this episode and you guys were saying that, I'm like, I can't believe this much happened in a single year. It's crazy that I forgot that it even
Mhm.
happened this year.
Yeah,
Right.
fair point. What else was shocking in terms of the world, Turan?
Well, I don't know about shocking, but the next big headline that happened in pop culture was, well, pop culture and sports, was Messi
Hmm.
finally lifting the World Cup at the
Yeah.
age of 35, and I thought that was an amazing moment. I think a lot of the world wanted him to win, and the way it went down was absolutely epic. Like, that was one of the best finals, sporting finals, that I've seen, and I'm talking across all sports, that I've seen in my lifetime. And there's a lot of older people that I know that have said the same thing. There's never been a match across any sport that's been that exciting, and the way he won it just made it even better. And he was already about talked amongst the greats in across sports, and I definitely put him up there with the Michael Jordans of the world, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods. Like, he is a legend across
Hmm.
any sport.
100%.
Yeah, not to take away from Messi's ring, I think as disappointing as the World Cup was for Canada, like we did have a lot of surprises coming out, like Morocco making it as far as it. I don't think
Yeah,
anyone had that in their cards. Like a
yeah,
lot of teams that were for years taken for granted were like, yo, like showing up, like they've been improving. So it's been an interesting World Cup even outside of the finals, I'd say.
yeah. Absolutely. I think the gap amongst the teams has reduced quite a bit, and that's probably have to do a lot with social media and the internet, and players now having access, players all across the world having access to facilities and tech and all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
nutrition that is now easily available. And so I feel like that's narrowed the gap in terms of athleticism and skills, amongst players, and so that's why you're seeing more competition now. I think this was
Hmm.
this was a very closely fought World Cup. Like, there were a lot of upsets,
Mm.
as Mo said, that weren't expected, that happened. Morocco, Croatia reaching the semis again, and just a sidebar, it's funny that Croatia and Morocco were both in Canada's group, and they both made the
Mm.
semifinals. So, so it's not that wasn't as bad for Canada. I guess they can take some pride in the fact that they came up against two semifinalists.
Fair.
Yeah, that is fair. Cool.
All right. Now, I mean, that I guess the biggest topics of 2022. Like, we 2023 is coming up just around the corner. Like, as recording this in the next couple of days. Like, 20. Do you guys think 2023 will be as impactful as 2022 has been with like in throughout the world? Like, I don't know. Let's just hop into some predictions we have as
Let me get my crystal ball. Hold up.
yeah.
I think for 2023, and we'll go into like specific topics, but in general, I think 2022 is essentially the trigger point. All the events that were triggered in 2022 will see an impact in 2023 for
Hmm.
those, right? And years to come. That's kind of my kind of prediction. Like 2023 will just be kind of the result, if you will, and
Yeah.
we'll see the impacts happening in 2023.
Yeah, I guess starting with like yeah, as you were saying, like we're gonna start to seeing the ripple effects of a lot of different things that happened in 2022, and I guess this is like a good leadway to like my prediction for 2023 is that either Tesla will flop or it will move. Um, I guess why I'll say it'll flop. There's just a lot of headwinds that don't have to do with Elon. I think we're in not a great economic environment. What else? Like, there's a lot of political pressure between China and the States, and like Tesla being an American company, but they actually sell a lot of their cars in China. Like, is Elon's own like brand going to be affected by whatever is happening between these two countries? We're also seeing a lot more competition in the space. Like, a lot of car manufacturers are starting to release into this EV market, and their logistics are way better than Tesla, right? Tesla being a new brand. Sorry, my voice is dying. Being a new brand, they have a lot of things to work out in their supply chain, but you have companies like Ford, Toyota. They've been making cars for almost 100 years. Like their supply lines are, you know, as
Very
optimized they
efficient.
can exactly. And as they as they move into the space, like that's a lot more competition that I guess Tesla was not counting on earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think it has a it's going to permeate a lot of the effects, right? Like China cracking down internally a lot more, right? They 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 have a lot of consolidated power, and so who knows how that's going to have an effect on Tesla and things along those lines. I don't know. I'm rooting for Tesla though. I always have been. I'm hoping their gigafactories maybe take off a little bit more, and they're providing that value across the world, and maybe they'll create some new income streams that way.
Mm-hmm.
And them being the first kind of huge pusher for those technologies, I think I'm hoping they stick around because they definitely pushed all the other car manufacturers to do this, right? So
Mhm.
we have to give them that credit, which is a net benefit for the world.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and this leads nicely into our other prediction with the EV revolution also taking a slowdown. Um, to what you guys were saying about Tesla, I think the entire industry is going to get affected from what is happening in the world, inflation and all of that. Yes, EV has been there's more companies now that are manufacturing electric vehicles, but I still don't see as many on the road. I don't know about you guys. And again,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, in Canada. It's probably different in other parts of the world, but I still feel uh, there is you know how they say when you're given something new, it takes time to for the change to affect, right? And so I think people, just as a natural instinct, we like the comfort, we like what we know, and so it might take a lot longer than what is being predicted in terms of the change from gas vehicles to electric vehicles. Uh, and what is not helping is inflation, and with the economy slowing down, people are holding on to cash, and they'll be more likely to keep using their existing gas powered vehicles than to switch into a whole other platform, if you will, a whole other technology. And there's a lot of other things that I don't think are talked about as much. Um, One of them being, and I was just talking about it with my fiance. If you got an electric vehicle, where we live currently, it's not that easy to power it up, to connect it to power,
Mm-hmm.
to charge, and
Mm-hmm.
and so what is the government going to do about that, in terms of, or what is being done about that, to create the infrastructure for every household to have the ability to charge cars easily, right?
Yeah.
And I don't see that happening, so right now at least. And so I feel there's going to be a slowdown. You're going to see manufacturers, release cars, but I don't think it's going to take off as fast as
Mm-hmm.
people think.
So
Like I
one question, sorry, Mo. One question though. Why is it so hard for you to charge your car at home? Like, isn't it just like a plug into a
So,
yeah,
so when you think of a home, you think of a very basic home. Yeah, say it's a detached or semi-detached with a garage in front. Okay, one. What if there's no garage? Okay, so you'd have to get connection of power outside. Not all
yeah,
houses have that. Okay. Two. What if it's a townhouse? Well, not a townhouse. Sorry. Are you guys familiar with quads, or those
mm-hmm.
houses that, like, so those houses still exist, where there
mm,
isn't, again, a garage, there's a driveway, there's one unit in the front, and then there's a unit at the back,
yeah,
right? So now, okay, how are you going to do it? So the one thing you could do is have some sort of infrastructure on the lawn, that's built on the lawn, that provides power, and I guess that can happen. But what is the homeowner going to do that? Right? There's
mm,
probably has to be some incentives. Maybe there's a overhaul done on the streets to allow that to happen, right? So those are the types of questions that I still have. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
definitely. Like I do see where Trans coming from in terms of like there's a lot of headwinds for the EV industry. I think the primary being battery technology and its reliance on lithium. Like now that every player is looking for this, like lithium's gonna obviously shoot up. If you haven't been following the charts, like it has been climbing up, but it looks like demand is coming, even more demand. But onto I guess what's making me a bit more optimistic is like I guess on a local level, there have been investments made onto charger stations, especially like along some of the major highways, like here in
Mm.
Ontario. I see a lot more charger stations at stores these days. Like
Yep.
there are challenges, definitely. Like infrastructure is not something that can be easily placed, and it may not be enough to keep up with like the demands of the public and governments to switch over to EV. Definitely.
Yeah, Mo, to that point though, yes, you're seeing more of that. But for example, you go to a Walmart, you'll see three parking spots for electric cars, or four,
Mm-hmm.
or five. There are at least a couple hundred cars that show up into a Walmart parking lot, right? So they're all going to want to use a charger,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
right? So,
potentially, because it's like if you charge your car at home, then and you're going to a local Walmart, you're likely not going to charge your car again at the Walmart, right? Like, yeah, sure, it's sitting there, you might as well, but I think that will get up there as soon as more demand hits the market, right? But I did want to say one thing before we move on to the next topic is um, the I think there's two forces that make EV actually not slow down, which is high gas prices, which are getting higher, and then other electricity cost getting cheaper and cheaper, right? So it's two forces that are making EV actually more viable, right? But I guess I agree with your kind of thing, Trent. Is like if there's more infrastructure related to this, that would help it be pushed forward. But I'm also having these conversations with my friends, and a lot of them are saying like my next car is probably going to be an EV, right? So I think it's going to take a while for us to see the effect of that in the next 2 or 3 years. But I think the boat is turning, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I definitely I'm on board. The boat is turning for sure. It's I think how fast is it going to be, right?
Yeah.
I think there's been predictions that it's going to be very fast. I don't think it's going to be that fast. I do agree. I also am probably looking at an EV as my next car, right?
There you go. Yeah.
But then again, it comes down to the switching costs. How
Yeah.
easy is it going to be to switch over? And I think that's the big
Agreed.
question that I believe hasn't been answered yet.
Yeah. That's a fair point. Um, but maybe you can buy an electrical vehicle in the metaverse. That might help. That might be easier because then there's not much switching costs there.
Why would you
Um,
need to buy a car in the metaverse when you can just teleport in?
fair point. Yo, who thought you'd buy real estate in the metaverse? The fact that people are doing that is like, who knows? They might buy a car.
Technically, this is not the first time. Second Life did it first.
Ah, fair point. Fair point.
Well,
Yeah.
if you think about it, websites are real estate. So people were buying real estate on the internet for the
Good
longest
point.
time.
Good
Mm.
point.
Good point. Yeah, fair point. But I think the main uh, so yeah, just going on the metaverse, is it actually going to catch on? I believe maybe not for 2023, but it will lay the foundation of the metaverse in the next coming years for sure. So this is one prediction I think is not going to be an effect of 2022 or potentially partially an effect because the investment of Meta into the metaverse was ongoing from 2022, but also going to be taking place in 2023 as well. And so I think they're doing major investment, and the technology that has been created or is being actively created on the metaverse front, I think is going to be tremendous. Even if Meta fails, I feel the amount of investment they've done, they'll probably just sell off the IP, and that IP will be worth a lot to other corporations. I think in the coming decades, right? Because it's crazy. They've invented this one thing where you wear a patch and you're playing a game with your fingers to move left and right, and then eventually you don't even have to move your fingers. And I think I mentioned this in the last pod. Like it'll detect the signal of you're going to move this finger, and it will automatically move the character to the right.
Yeah,
And so it's insane that that level of technology is being created. So I think that'll have some application, if not the one they want. So I do believe that not just the metaverse in terms of VR will catch on, but I think the technologies for AR and VR put together will definitely catch
Yeah,
on in
definitely.
2023.
are you
Yeah.
I think
talking mainstream or specific applications? Because I think specific applications, yeah, that will catch on for sure. Mainstream,
Yeah.
maybe some more time. What do you think?
I think mainstream too. Apple is,
Yeah.
I think, releasing their glass product at the end of 2023 or something like that.
Yeah.
So
It, I think it will, like for sure. AR, I think it's going to be in phases. AR will definitely catch on because now you're going to get a bit more digital augmentation in the world, and then people are going to realize, wait, some of this stuff actually can be ported over to VR, right? Like
Hmm.
next time I go into the grocery store, instead of like looking for the price tag or looking how much this will cost by weight or something along those lines, or prices at other stores, I just look at a cucumber and I can be like, oh, it's actually cheaper at Sobeys, or cheaper. It would never be cheaper at Sobeys. It would be cheaper at Food Basics, um, and I can get it for this much. And so, but now instead of shopping in AR by going to the grocery store, I can just go in the metaverse and shop in VR and just do that, and it gets delivered, right? So if you want that type of experience, it might take on. So I think it's a stepping stone, so to speak, AR to VR, and that's why I think metaverse will catch on
That's fair.
in 2023 specifically, or in the next.
in the next like 5 years. I think like 5 to 6
Yeah,
years.
that's fair.
I don't. You'll start seeing the as Turan said, you'll start seeing the boat shift, right? You won't. In 2023, you might see the kind of signs that the boat is turning, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, depends on what they release, right?
Yeah.
But it sucks that John Carmack, as you, what's his name?
John
Jack
Carmack.
Carmack?
No, John
John
Carmack.
Carmack. Yeah, I've been listening to his podcast from Lex Friedman. So if you guys want to check that out as well. It's like 5 hours long, really good. But yeah, he's a formidable person, formidable programmer in my opinion. So thank you for that, Mo, for giving me that shout out.
On a less smiley topic, I think our final like prediction for 2023 is food inflation. As were saying, like the effects or the starting point from last year, 2022, is they're just going to continue on this year, and I think that's food inflation. I mean, not all of it just due to Ukraine. I think we're starting to unfortunately see some of the more economic side effects of climate change. Like there are a lot of crops that if you like pay attention, not to the headlines, but like more boring agricultural news, crops are failing. Like the droughts in California are affecting
Mhm.
farm yields. Like there are companies researching different varieties of coffee because coffee is very temperamental in how it grows, and as climate change gets worse, they're modeling like we're going to have shortages of land we can use to land we could use to farm coffee beans. Like it's just gonna get worse as and not even all sorry, it's not all just climate change, it's also how we in as an industrial nation farm food. Like we rely on a lot of pesticides, a lot of like monocultures, and these are starting to get, you know, there's been disruptions in those kind of that kind of thought flow. Like yeah, that's why I think food costs are just going to go up.
Damn. I didn't. I've been hearing inklings of this, but I didn't know to the extent that was happening. What do you think about urban farming? Have you heard of that?
I
What's
have
that?
like I think it's nice to think about these solutions, but at the end of the day, will they match the kind of industrial scale that we've been
Mm,
expecting? Like
yeah.
obviously a small scale house farm is nice for if you're just for yourself, but like a lot of people don't have homes, and like in a very unit cost basis, it's not as economical as a big industrial farm, unfortunately. Um,
Right.
I think it'll blunt some of the costs on a local level, but in general, it's not gonna do much, I think.
Right. Yeah, because I've been hearing people creating farms not on just like some people are doing it on parking lots that were
Mhm.
kind of vacant and things along those lines, but a lot of people are doing in downtown cores where the rooftops were actually not being utilized correctly, right? So they would just do it on all these rooftops. So I could imagine like every single rooftop having their own farm and things along those lines, and maybe that helps curb some cost. But I agree, like to the level of industrialization and to the level of food that we need, amount of that we need, might not be possible to curb it with just that solution.
Yeah, it's not just farming. Like you know, we're also starting to see like fit like a lot of things like fishing is at really low levels because we've been overfishing. Um, I guess raising the cost of meat has been ridiculous everywhere.
Mm.
Like it's just
Mm,
very hard to keep up. Like it's a lot of things hitting from different angles, right?
yeah, yeah,
Plus, the population isn't shrinking. I'm
Yep.
talking the human
That.
population.
Hmm.
Right? We just hit 8 billion this year, so more people eating.
yeah. But I keep hearing like overpopulation isn't a problem, but underpopulation is going to be a problem.
Yeah. That.
Um, what do you think about that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I've been listening to this guy like Peter Zihan. He's like 50-50 on saying something good and saying something dumb. But anyways, his a lot of his like predictions have been predicated on like demographics in a lot of countries slowing down. Like, it is right to an extent, right? Like if you have less people to support, or if you have less people to support the more people that can't work, like
Hmm.
it, yeah, we're built on growing like our entire society, but when that growth stops, what do we do?
Yeah, yeah, that's a fair point. But yeah, this is probably the longest podcast that we've ever had. Hopefully, you guys have made it till the end, and if you have, please subscribe, like. That always helps us. Give us topics for the next year. We're definitely going to be doing some planning sessions to make this more valuable for you guys. So please let us know what you guys want. We really, really thank you for listening. If you have been listening this far, thank you. Really appreciate it. And yeah, that was our wrap up and review for 2022 and some of the predictions for 2023. Please like and subscribe and have a great day.
Sayonara.
Wishing y'all a good 2023. Peace out.
Peace out. Take care.